I get asked this question, Kevin, nearly like every week, if not almost every day. Is this good enough? And that's what, made me think that this session you're about to do is just absolutely amazing to start off with. The things that you evaluate HDR monitors with, I just can't wait to see.
Well, I'm not going to do too much evaluating. I'm luckily joined by Gregg Loewen of PVA and also the International Colorist Academy, and he's a professional calibrator. And we're also joined by Tyler from Portrait Displays, and he's the ultimate expert. And Tyler also has some very exciting news at the end of our short little session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my opinions based on the displays that I've had hands on. So that doesn't mean that there is not other displays out there, but I think we can find a little bit of a pattern here, and we should probably kick right into it, if that's okay with you, Jeff. You good to go? Okay. So the first category, and like Jeff, I get asked these questions on a regular basis. And the first category that I put in there is, I've got $1,000. Can I get a professional quality reference grading monitor? And today we're specifically looking at HDR. So there's very little under $1,000, honestly, and nothing for HDR, in my opinion. You have to look at the technology, really. For professional HDR, what are we looking for? We're looking for 1000 nits on the screen, not tone mapped, 1000 nits on the screen, 10-bit display, good rendition, as close to 100% P3 color space as we can get. So 90% is not going to cut it. And there isn't anything under 1000. If you are looking for a 709 display, I would suggest probably you would look at the BenQ range. Asus and Dell also have some nice ones, HP, etc., etc. Greg, anything you'd like to throw into the 1000 bucket?
I think we can start looking at some of the prosumer stuff. The LG OLEDs are quite nice, and some of them are right around that $1,000 price point, and they might be a little bit more than that. But again, not great for HDR, but for SDR, they can make P3, and they can do 100 nits quite easily, and have good color space and good gamuts, and track well with everything, with gamma and everything else. Yeah,
I think that's the thing, is for SDR you can do fine. For HDR, well, we'll talk a little bit more about the LGs. I thought they're a bit more than that. Tyler, anything that you've come across?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much covered kind of like the high-end, more graphics displays that are really targeted towards graphic design and stuff that can be calibrated to 709 in a decent way. Mm-hmm. But really, you really need to kind of go above that if you want any kind of HDR use, and absolutely, if you want to start learning how HDR works in a color grading workflow.
Yeah, so the next category really, and I just threw this one in there because I think it's an important one, is what if you need SDI connections? So I'm excluding for now the possibility that you have an HDMI input and you put an adapter on the back end of it, which is fine. But if you read the Dolby specifications, the Netflix specifications, and some of the bigger corporate specifications, they are still adamant that you have to be connecting SDI. It's more controllable, it's more predictable, etc., etc., etc. At the sub $6,000 mark, there's very little on the market. In fact, you're really only looking at the Flanders range, and you're going to be looking at a smaller, probably an HD display. I may be out of date on that, but last time I looked, their displays were HD, not 4K. Tyler, let's ask you. You're the expert in this. How important is it to have an SDI input on the screen?
Well, one thing it does get you is there is no EDID negotiation. So when we're talking about like DisplayPort and HDMI, they have information that they pass along to the source device that says, this is my preferred resolution. This is my preferred, limited versus full range. Do I support YCBCR or RGB? And that's what you can get into trouble with, where there's some automatic stuff happening that you're unaware of. We're on a true broadcast or reference monitor, even kind of the 1080p SDR versions, in the 20 to 24 inch range that have SDI inputs. All of that is kind of manual. You tell it, I want limited range. You tell it what the incoming format is, or at least you have the ability to do that. So that's kind of what you're giving up. And that is where you can get into trouble. If something's happening that you don't know about, it's not immediately obvious unless you have something else to compare it to.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So SDI is important, but at the sub 6,000, again, you're really not going to get anything in HDR. We're looking at sort of north of $20,000 for those monitors. What if you want a big, as Greg suggested, a big OLED TV to work on HDR? Can that be considered a reference display? And I'm going to kick off here and say firmly no, for a number of reasons. The main one is, frankly, none of them get to 1,000 nits. And if you don't do 1,000 nits without tone mapping, how do you create the metadata to do the tone mapping later? So you really want to be looking at a clean feed, and the OLEDs can't do that. The other problem with the OLED televisions is they're all white OLEDs. And so their ability to meet the color gamut at the brighter signals is poor. They're very inaccurate at brighter levels. Greg, you have a lot of experience with these.
You're nailing it. With the WRGB, you can't. You're hitting 900 nits on the Panasonic OLEDs, but again, as illuminance goes up, your delta E values go up because the white pixel kicks in and desaturates the colors.
And that's a technology limitation, isn't it? So it doesn't, like you say, the Panasonic is very nice, but it's just not going to get you there.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to point out is these things are great for learning grading in HDR, because if you don't have a job booked that is going to be on one of these over-the-top streaming services with a big budget that demands a real HDR reference monitor that's $20,000 to $30,000. If you don't have access to that, how are you going to learn, right? How are you going to build up your skill set? And I think that's where these can come into play. Also, these TVs are pretty much what is used as a client monitor for the bigger $30,000 displays. And what I've seen is about 90% of the scenes look exactly the same on them. It's just there are scenes with bright saturated colors that these televisions just can't hit. And that's where you'll see a difference. But for learning, I think these are a great platform.
I agree. They're pretty good. Although I've got to say, my experience with grading on those screens is it can be quite frustrating because of the dimming cutting in. I know you can override that with the service remote, but then you risk seriously damaging and burning the screen. So we'll move on to the next category, which is you've got $6,000 or less. You don't need it to be above 32 inches. Now there starts to be some interesting models on the market. And I'm thinking particularly the offerings from ASUS and Dell. I have to say I'm favoring the ASUS still myself, but ASUS, Dell, and I think some of the other companies come in at around anything between $3,000 and $5,000, and they will give you 1,000 nits or more. The new UCG is 1,600 nits, and full screen sustained 1,000 nits coverage. They give you great calibration. In fact, they're Kalman ready, so they link directly, they're controlled directly from the calibration software. So at that level, you can get some interesting monitors.
I would also include the Apple XDR in that family of kind of level of
Yeah,
performance.
I always drop that one out. It's just a pain to connect to because of the Thunderbolt connection. So you're going to end up spending quite a lot of money on that display. But yeah, it's a good display. Greg, any experience in that area?
Well, I've been liking the Dell, and it's actually right behind me right now.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to get my hands on the new Asus, which I haven't been able to get to yet, so I can't really comment on that one. How about oh, my brain just
Well, one other thing that I'd like to point out is you know, these can be a great platform to learn HDR grading on, but it's also, I think these are going to be very popular not only in VFX, like artist workstations, and also for people are pushing to get everybody in the whole pipeline looking at HDR as early as possible, all the way to the set. So I think these will be very popular for editors, so they can kind of get an idea of which scenes to select or what they're going to do as far as their cuts, to be able to them have some kind of, not the exact final look, but what is the experience going to be like in the edit?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, the more we get HDR in front of editors, visual effects, everything, so important. Absolutely. Which brings us to our, you know, the big category, as it were. Money's no object. What do we go for? And so in that category, the popular choice is the dual layer technology, which all cap out at 1000 nits. There's the Sony, there's the Flanders, there's ISO, there's Postium, Canon. There's a whole bunch of them using similar technology, but very different in the displays. But you're going to be spending between $20,000 and $40,000. Tyler, tell us a little bit about the difference between, it's the same screen basically, but the monitors are very different, aren't they?
Yeah, you're really looking at different kind of ancillary features. Do you need stuff with scopes? Do you need something that has DisplayPort? If you are in the visual effects, you want to hook it directly up to something like that. One thing that's interesting is some of them are glossy and some of them are matte finish. So the finish is actually different. So it depends on the kind of your use and your preference. One thing that is kind of not a lot of people are aware of, but this panel technology from this supplier that supplies everybody is going away. So we're close to a situation like we are with the X300, where the panels are no longer made. Eventually you can't buy one. And we don't know how much longer that's going to be before you can't buy one. But at that point, we'll see what new technology comes around. Is there going to be another panel supplier that can do the same technology? Or are we going to be going to a more, everybody's using a zone backlighting display, for example, like the Flanders 310K that has, you know, 2048 zones. But the thing with zone backlighting is you can get brighter than 1000 nits. If you want the master to higher than 1000 nits, then you have to pick zone backlighting. And in that case, you have like the 2000 nit Flander, or the 3000 nit Flanders, you have the 2000 nit Canon monitor. It's like the DPV 3220. I always get those confused, but so there's kind of two options on the market. There's the dual layer light modulating cellular, and then there's the zone backlighting displays. And they both have their pros and cons, but I think at least for the near future, the dual layer ones are going to be going away just because the panel supplier is no longer making them.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. There's a lot of people vested in the dual layer. I always had reservations about it, I've got to say. First of all, because I don't think 1000 nits is enough for proper mastering. And secondly, because that was never ever going to be a technology that could scale into the home. Whereas the Flanders 310K, I know it's a little harder to drive, but I mean, I love that monitor, and it's a technology which can be scaled down fewer zones or not so bright, whatever, to the sort of things that we see in homes. And so I think that's the interesting one at the moment. Who knows what will be on the horizon in 12 months? Greg, any thoughts of what the future holds?
We're kind of waiting to see what happens. Like you said, we're losing manufacturers of a technology type, and we have to see what's going to fill the void.
Indeed. So even if you have unlimited funds, it's a difficult time to buy HDR displays. But that said, there are some great displays on the market. Don't forget to take into account the cost of calibration. That's super important, particularly in HDR. And some models come with some sort of calibration either built in or freely available for that model. And pretty much all the good ones are integrated with Kalman, and we need to mention Lightspace as well, so that they can be easily managed if you have that software and a probe and some sort of a pattern generator, although that's less of an issue because you can use Resolve. Yeah, Greg, tell us a little bit about PVA and what you're finding in the consumer markets.
Well, the consumer market, 95% of the guys are going OLED. There's just the 77 inches is large in the prosumer market. If they're getting bigger than that, then they're going to some of the LEDs. Then, of course, if they want bigger than that again, then they're doing projectors. Projectors have never been officially HDR. HDR and mastering is always, the 1000 nit master typically. So when you're doing it in a home projector market, you might be getting 100 nits if you're lucky, maybe 150 nits if you have a gain, to your screen. So we're doing a lot of things on the home market, on the home cinema market, to try to make HDR look good on projectors. But on the flat panel side, it's 90% OLED. Then if someone's wanting to have a lot of ambient light in the room, then they're considering the LEDs, or they're considering LEDs if they want something bigger.
Understood. Now, Tyler, I know you're itching to tell us some big news, some huge news. Go ahead.
So can I share my screen for 2 or 3 slides? This is probably the biggest upgrade to Calman since we added AutoCal itself. It's a new calibration / LUT engine. It's called Aurora Color Engine, and it is using the latest color science research to build this engine. We've spent over 2 years working on this, our color science and engineering teams, and it's designed for HDR, SDR, wide color gamut. It's really optimized for the latest display technologies, and it pretty much eliminates all posterization and banding that you could sometimes get with the previous engine. The way it's going to work is it's kind of added in alongside the existing engine, and we're moving over all the different displays that are supported with 3D LUTs and Calman, because the technology actually allows us to optimize the algorithm for specific display technologies that have different behaviors. So OLED has a different behavior than a zone backlighting display, and we can even optimize it for one specific model. So what it's going to be supporting now in Calman 2021 is all the LG OLEDs from 2018 to 2021, the Asus PA32 UCX family, the HDR monitor we were discussing earlier, all the BenQ models that we supported, which is the PV270, SW270C, SW271, and the SW321. The Dell UP3221, which we discussed earlier, along with the Asus and that family of range. And then we have many more coming soon. And what we plan to do is we're doing a major release of Calman 2021. We actually released the release candidate yesterday. And then we're going to be following it up with more frequent releases this year. So we're going to be adding them all throughout the year, new displays and devices like LUT boxes for this new color engine.
Super excited. I downloaded it yesterday actually and did my first calibration this morning. And it was what I noticed is it's very stable. Like I didn't have to repeat readings. I didn't have to go backwards and forwards. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some more with it.
Yeah, our engineers have been like, I probably did hundreds of LG calibrations throughout the year doing this testing process. So when we are able to release it to everyone, which we just did yesterday, it's really set up to give excellent results for people.
Very cool. Now we do have, do we have a giveaway? Do we have a quiz at this point?
Yes, we do. I'll open Slido. Everybody get your phones out and be ready to join, because we're just going to ask 2 quick questions about Kingston to win this prize. Sorry, about portrait. Tyler, would you like to talk about the prizes a little bit?
Yeah, it's a subscription, not a subscription, a license to Calman Studio. So that supports pretty much all of the displays that I talked about earlier.
The Slido code for anybody is Colorist Mixer, capital C Colorist, capital M Mixer. And I'm going to put it into the chat in a second.
Cool. Yeah, so whenever you're looking for a monitor, you need to build in the cost of calibration. The good news is that most of the time, once you're invested, you can use that on future displays, but you definitely need something to rely on. And the cheaper the monitor, the more often you're going to have to check your calibration.
Well, some names coming in now.
Okie dokie, here goes the screen. Wow, here we go.
That's
49 people in the quiz.
That was great. Thanks a lot, guys. Very informative. There's a lot to get in, I know, in 20 minutes, but.
Well, and if you want to know more, you know, we are running classes at the at ICA at iColorist.com to do calibration, to do color science. So check out iColorist.com for classes if you need to know more about calibration.
And Greg, aren't we doing Greg and Kevin, are we going to do a breakout room if people want to talk more about monitors?
Yes, we will. Not sure, is that going to be now, Gigi, or later?
It's going to be after all the
No, that'll be in
the
the social half hour at the middle of the event and also at the end if people want to join. So just after both quizzes.
Yeah, so we will be available in the breakout room to host. I saw there was a lot of questions and comments in the chat, which I didn't have time to reply to, but we'll do that in the breakout rooms. Are we going for the big 100 to run the quiz?
We're absolutely going for the big 100. And for those of you who've never used Slido before, basically you can use your phone or open up a separate tab and join a series of either Q&A, or in this case, it's going to be polls that we're going to be doing throughout the event. So you'll want to keep this open, keep your phone handy. Not that I think any of you travel anywhere without your phones anymore. As soon as we get to at least 100, I think, and we're at 98, we just need, there we are, we're at the magic 100 mark. Let's take a look. Let's start this quiz. Okay. What does the 10 in HDR 10 stand for?
There's 30 seconds for this one, Jeff. So don't
Well,
rush,
there was only
folks.
17 left. There are only
Yeah,
17
there
left.
is. And if there's a tie, it could be on speed. Not that I'm saying everyone should rush.
Now, you don't want to put the answer in the chat. You want to be putting the answer into Slido.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, if
yeah.
you want to win, you've got to be in Slido.
Yeah.
Okay, look at that.
Whoa.
Look at that. So we got 53% of them knocking it out with the correct answer. Let's go back for that correct answer. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's 10-bit. And let's take a look at our leaderboard at the moment. We've got Stephen and Lewis right at 5-6 seconds there. They're the people with the fastest hands in the West. We're coming up with question number 2. Here we go in 1, 2, 3. What is a technical term for the phenomenon of 2 different displays technologies looking different, even though that they measure it the same? And of course, the answer is it's a shit show.
Who wrote that? Who wrote that question, Tyler? How did you come
That-
up with that, buddy?
My favorite topic.
It's a shit show. It's not, is it? Greg, surely not.
These poor guys,
Yeah.
Warren, end up at a place and they do the
Oh.
calibrations and they're like, why doesn't
Yeah.
everything perfectly match?
It's a shit. Oh, 5% voted for that. I'm quite happy
Well,
with
I quite like that. That's what I'd call it.
Okay. With our right answer being mesmerism.
Metamerism.
Mesmerism.
Metamerism.
Yeah.
Metamerism. Wow, I've been
Yeah,
saying it wrong for years.
Yeah, mesmerism is that hypnosis mumbo jumbo.
I think we
Mr.
gotta go
Tompkins.
right- Toby Tompkins.
Toby.
You are our winner.
Yes. Well done, Toby.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thanks for portrait. Thanks, Tyler.